You can find out definitely what everybody is doing. Hang on. There it is. Okay. It's called 10 Little Christians, and it doesn't have an author, so it just says selected. 10 little Christians standing in line. One disliked the preacher. Hang on. I forgot I need these. All right, we'll start over. 10 little Christians standing in line. One disliked the preacher, and then there were 9. 9 little Christians stayed up very late. 1 overslept Sunday, and then there were 8. 8 little Christians on their way to heaven. 1 took the low road, and then there were 7. 7 little Christians chirping like chicks. 1 disliked the singing, and then there were 6. 6 little Christians seemed very much alive, but 1 lost his interest, and then there were 5. 5 little Christians pulling for heaven's shore, but 1 stopped to rest, and then there were 4. 4 little Christians, each busy as a bee. 1 got his feelings hurt, and then there were 3. 3 little Christians knew not what to do. 1 joined the sporty crowd, and then there were 2. 2 little Christians, our rhyme is nearly done, differed with each other, and then there was 1. 1 little Christian can't do much, it's true. Brought his friend to Bible study, and then there were 2. Earnest Christians, each one more. That doubled the number, and then there were 4. 4 sincere Christians worked early and late, each one another, and then there were 8. 8 desirous Christians, if they doubled as before, in just so many Sundays, we'd have 1,024. In this little jingle, there is a lesson true. You belong either to the building up or to the wrecking crew. So I read that the other day, and I thought that would be good because it kind of goes along with what we're going to be talking about this morning. So, first thing we're going to look at, which one of these buttons do you push, Chad? Oh, my bad. There we go. Reasons why we should attend the services. Now, the first one, these aren't in any particular order, but the one on the top says, because we love the Lord. Matthew 18 and verse 20, it says, for whether 2 or 3 are gathered together in my name, I am there in the midst of them. So, the Lord is present when we assemble, and we all love to be in the presence of those that we love. To maintain our spiritual fervor. You know, it's like a coal or a piece of wood in the fireplace. If it sits there by itself, it's going to go out. But if you add some to it, if you add more coals, you add more wood, then that fire is going to grow. And that's the way it is for here. In Matthew 24, it says, and because lawlessness will abound, the love of many will grow cold. One way to lose interest and grow cold in the Lord's work is to miss services and not show up. That's one way to grow cold. We feel the need to go, and we feel that we are needed. We need the association. We need the teaching. We need the prayers. We need the spiritual communion, which comes from the worship assembly. And our brothers here, they need our presence, and they also need our prayers and our interest and our participation. We have our Brothers Keepers groups here, and I think that is one great way for us to get to know one another better and to help each other. That's because it's just like the one wood on the fire, you know, it's just going to grow cold. But if we all feed off each other, we become stronger. In order to satisfy our spiritual appetites. Matthew 5, verse 6 says, "Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness' sake, for they shall be filled." And look at 1 Peter chapter 2, verses 1 and 2. It says, "Therefore, laying aside all malice, all deceit, hypocrisy, envy, and all evil speaking, as newborn babes desire the pure milk of the word, as you may grow thereby." You know, if we lose our appetites in our physical body, then that should be a danger signal to us. You know, there's something wrong, we're sick or something. Well, it should be the same way for our spiritual bodies as well. If we stop wanting to learn, then there's something wrong. We need to step back and take a look and see what's wrong. So we need to desire the word like babes desire the milk. And we need, like in Matthew says, we need to hunger and thirst for those, for righteousness, so we can be filled. If y'all have a question or comment or anything, just be sure to raise your hand. Because of the example that we would set and the advice we would give by our absenteeism. Just look at the example we'd be setting for our children. Matthew 5, verse, well, no, it's not yet, I'm sorry. Ephesians 6, 5 says that children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. And what kind of example would we be setting them if we're always missing the services, you know, and then God tells them to obey our parents in the Lord. So that's kind of confusing. So we need to be setting the right example for them. Also, 1 Peter 3, verses 1 through 7. Can I get somebody to read that for me, please? First. All right. And notice in that first verse it said, even if some do not obey the word, they, without a word, may be won by the conduct of their wives. And I have an aunt who was like that. She married a man, and she continued to go to the services, but he never did go. But she was setting that example, you know, for him. And I'm sure you know of someone who is like that. And it may be years down the road, and then finally they obey the gospel. What about the example would be setting for those of around us, those in the community and everything? Like it says in Matthew 5:16, "Let your light so shine before men that they may see your good works and glorify God in heaven." So see, we're always an example to others. Other people are looking at us, they're watching us, and they're seeing how we conduct our lives, which also reflects, you know, on the church and on God. So we need to always set the right example. I like this one, because this is where we'd want to be when the Lord comes back. What better place to be than here worshiping God when the Lord comes back? Mark 13:32 says, "But of that day and hour no one knows, not even the angels in heaven nor the Son, but only the Father." And 2 Peter 3:14 says, "Therefore, beloved, looking forward to these things, be diligent to be found by him in peace, without spot and blameless." So this is where I would want to be when the Lord comes back. We are no better than anyone else, yet we expect others to attend. Let me ask you a question. Would we be willing to place membership at a congregation if we were to move? Or we would expect others who move into the community and place membership here if the preacher was always out, if the elders were always out, or the deacons, or the Bible school teachers? Would we join a congregation like that? Would we join, without a legitimate excuse? They're out because maybe they had an opportunity to go play golf or something like that. But yet, we expect these people to attend, but then, shouldn't we expect the same of ourselves? Let's look at Matthew chapter 7, verses 1 through 5. If I can get someone to read that, please. All right. Also, Romans chapter 2 and verse 21 says, "You therefore who teach another, do you teach yourself? You who preach that a man should not steal, do you steal? You who say, do not commit adultery, do you commit adultery? Or you who abhor idols, do you rob temples?" I mean, like I said, whenever you're pointing your finger at somebody, then there's three of them pointing right back at you. So if we expect others to be here, then we need to expect ourselves to be here also. We do not want to defile or sear our conscience. Titus 1:15 says, "To the pure all things are pure, but to those who are defiled are unbelieving, nothing is pure, but even their mind and conscience are defiled." And then again, 1 Timothy 4, verses 1 and 2. Could I get someone to read that? 1 Timothy 4, verses 1 and 2. Very good. So the first time that we miss, are we not hurting our conscience? I mean, the first time, and then I'm not talking about when we have to miss, we're sick, if there's work. I'm talking about willingly missed services. We kind of harden our hearts a little bit, and a persistence in that will defile and sear the conscience until, we can miss without it even, without any guilt at all, without it even bothering us. So we need to be careful of that. 1 John 3, verses 20 and 21 says, "For if our heart condemns us, God is greater than our heart and knows all things. Beloved, if our heart does not condemn us, we have confidence toward God." to be in subjection to the elders. Hebrews 13, verse 7 says, remember those who rule over you, who have spoken the word of God to you, whose faith follow, considering the outcome of their conduct. And also Hebrews 13, verse 17 says, obey those who rule over you and be submissive, for they watch out for your souls as those who must give an account. Let them do so with joy and not with grief, for that would be unprofitable for you. You know, a lot of people think that the only time that we have to attend services is on Sunday morning. But I think that this verse right here states otherwise. I think that every time that the doors are open, I think that we should be present because, I mean, they're the ones who watch out over our souls, and it's just something that's good for us. I mean, how could it be bad, you know, to show up and worship God or to study the Bible on Wednesday night? So I think that this verse right here says that, and also in, we'll look at in a little bit Hebrews 10:25. We'll go ahead and look at that right now. It says, we'll go back to verse 24, and let us consider one another in order to stir up love and good works, not forsaking the assembling of ourselves together as in the manner of some, but exhorting one another, and so much the more as you see the day approaching. So if the doors are open, say for VBS or say for a gospel meeting or Sunday night or Wednesday night, then we need to be here. If the elders expect themselves to be here, then we should expect to be here also. To prevent backsliding. 1 Corinthians 11. Could I get someone to read 1 Corinthians chapter 11, verses 20 through verse 30? 1 Corinthians 11, 20 through verse 30. Okay, thank you. And so whenever you come together in one place, he was complaining because that they were not taking the Lord's Supper. They were doing things. One was going ahead and taking it over here, and this guy wasn't. But it's when we come together, we're to commune with one another, and when we take the Lord's Supper, we're to examine ourselves. And he said, because that they weren't doing it all the right way, he said, for this reason there are many that are sick and weak among you, and many fall asleep. So, being absent is the first indication of the ultimate apostasy. If we was to look at, well, let's look at 2 Peter chapter 2 and verse 20 and 21. Now this is what would happen if apostasy was to happen, which is, let's say, for if after they have escaped the pollutions of the world through the knowledge of the Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, they are again entangled in them and overcome, and the latter end is worse for them than the beginning. For it would have been better for them not to have known the way of righteousness than having known it and turned back from the holy commandments delivered to them. So that's pretty bad. If we know that we're supposed to do something and not do it, then that's bad. And it'd even be worse for it had you known to start with than it not known at all. To keep from sinning, this kind of goes along with that one that we just talked about. Just like we said, it's a good to attend all the services, and if we know to do good and do not do it, then we commit sin. James 4:17 says, therefore to him who knows to do good and does not do it, to him it is sin. And this kind of goes along with the first one. It's because Jesus is there. Matthew 18 and verse 20 says, where there are 2 or 3 gathered in my name, there I am in the midst of them. If we want to be where Jesus is. To walk in the footsteps of the early saints. Acts 2:42 says, and they continued steadfastly in the apostles' doctrine and fellowship, in the breaking of bread, and in prayers. And also in Acts chapter 20 and verse 7, it says, now on the first day of the week when the disciples came together to break bread, Paul, ready to depart to the next day, spoke to them and continued his message until midnight. And also 1 Corinthians 14 and verse 23, it says, the whole church comes together in one place. Hang on, let's see. Therefore, if the whole church comes together in one place and all speak with tongues, and there come in those who are uninformed or unbelievers, and will they not say, are you out of your mind? Now, it's talking about the first part there, the part we want is when they come together. So when the whole church comes together in one place, setting the example, wanting to walk in the footsteps of the early church. To keep from casting a vote to close the doors of the church. If nobody shows up, then I guess there's no reason to keep the doors open if nobody's going to come in. So by you not being here, then you're just casting your vote that you want the doors to close. We don't want to do that. What would that be saying to the community around us? If we miss a single service, and every other member of the congregation can too, and if we can miss one, why not 2, 3, or all of them? Such obtaining, why have a meeting place at all? To prevent from robbing God. The first day of the week is called the Lord's Day. Revelation chapter 1, verse 10 says, I was in the Spirit on the Lord's day, and I heard behind me a loud voice as of a trumpet. So, to take this day and use it for our own selfish desires, is that not taking what's not rightfully ours, if it is the Lord's day? And how about robbing God? Is it possible to rob God? Malachi 3:8 says, will a man rob God? Yet you have robbed me. But you say, in what way have we robbed you? In tithes and offerings. So we can rob God of our money, but we can also rob him of our time also. And the last one, the reasons why we should attend, is to keep from disobeying. And we read a while ago, Hebrews 10:25, not forsaking this. Let's read it again. 10:25. It says, and we'll start in verse 24, and let us consider one another in order to stir up love and good works, not forsaking the assembling of ourselves together, as is the manner of some, but exhorting one another, and so much the more as you see the day approaching. The key word in this text is forsaking. When say that if Chad goes away to preach at another congregation, well, he's not forsaking. If someone is out sick, well, then they're not forsaking either. But or let's say that someone is out of town on vacation, but they are attending services somewhere else. Well, then they're not forsaking either. But the meaning of this text is that when a person misses services when he could be present, but because of unconcern or indifference he stays away, then this person has forsaken the assembly. Now, according then to Hebrews 10, verse 25, then that has been violated, and consequently sin has been committed. All right, now let's look at some excuses made for not attending services. I'm too busy. I think if you're too busy to attend services, then you're just too busy. But Matthew 6 and verse 33 says, but seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things shall be added unto you. And these next couple of slides that go along with this. If you really figure, you consider how many hours there are in a week. I think I looked them up the other day. I think there was 168 hours in a week. And then we're here, 4 hours of the week? You still have 164 hours. So that's why I say if you're too busy to attend services, then you're just too busy. All right, we'll carry on. Yes, sir. You're exactly right. That's right. It's all an attitude that we have, and when we can convince ourselves and fool ourselves that that we're this next one we're going to talk about is I'm too tired, I don't feel well, whatever. It's all an attitude. We can fool ourselves, but we're not going to fool God. God knows, and if you have to ask ourselves, are we too tired to go to a sporting event? I know you come home from work and you're tired. Does it really matter what day of the week it is? If it's on a Friday night and you're going to go to the movies or go out to eat, or if it's Wednesday night and you got worship services or Bible study, it's all about an attitude. Are we too tired to do those other things? Does it matter just because of what day of the week it is, and we know we're expected to be at the services? I think it's all an attitude that we have. How about company came in? Now, I guess some people could use that excuse. I've never heard that excuse before, but I guess some people might use that as an excuse. But we still must put the Lord first, even if we did have company come in. And then again, why don't we bring them to the services with us? You know, I mean, if they're not members of the church, that could lead to converting them, you know, and is that what we're supposed to be doing anyway? Well, then people say, well, what if I offend them or something like that? Well, would you much rather offend God or would you much rather offend your company? You know, a lot of times I guess we don't really think about things like that. You know, we don't want to hurt our company's feelings, but yet we can hurt God. I'm not feeling well. That'd go along with the same thing as being tired. And God knows if we're sick, but a lot of times we have to ask ourselves: is this being sick going to keep me out of going to work? You know, I don't see how people see that. They're too sick to come to services, but they're not too sick to go to work. Like I said, you're not fooling God. I don't have good enough clothes. I think I've heard anybody use this one before either, but 1 Samuel 16 verse 7 says, "But the Lord said to Samuel, do not look at his appearance or his physical stature, because I have refused him. For the Lord does not see as man sees, but the Lord looks, or man looks at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart." The weather is too bad. Now that one might keep me out of services. I work for Georgia Power, and when the weather is bad, then I get called in. But I've heard people use this excuse before. Well, it's raining out. I might get my hair wet. Of course, I can't use that one. But it all boils down to the attitude that we have. Are we going to put God first? Or are we going to come up with excuses to not put God first? I don't have a way. I tell you what, if you don't have a way, I know there's plenty of people here that would be more than willing to give you a ride to services. Call me. I'll come get you. But somebody mistreated me. Let's see. Let's look at Matthew 5 and verse 23. Oh, I went the wrong way. It says, "Therefore, if you bring the gift to the altar and there remember that your brother has something against you, leave your gift before the altar and go your way. First, be reconciled to your brother, and then come offer your gift." If somebody mistreated us, has the Lord mistreated us? I don't think he has. How about Matthew 18 and verse 15? "Moreover, if your brother sins against you, go tell him his fault between you and him alone. If he hears you, you have gained your brother. But if he will not hear you, take with you one or two, that by the mouth of these 2 or 3 witnesses every word may be established. And if he refuses to hear them, tell it to the church. But if he refuses even to hear the church, let him be to you like a heathen or a tax collector." I really thought I would get a lot further than this. The people are too cold or unfriendly. Matthew chapter 7, starting in verse 1 says, "Judge not that you be not judged, for what judgment you judge, you will be judged, and with what measure you use, it will be measured back to you. And why do you look at the speck in your brother's eye, but do not consider the plank in your own eye? Or how can you say to your brother, let me remove the speck from your eye, and look the plank in your own eye? Hypocrite, first remove the plank from your own eye, then you'll be able to see clearly to remove the speck from your brother's eye." I think we read that a while ago, but that kind of goes along with it. Maybe the fault is with us. Maybe it's not other people. Maybe it's with us. And remember that the real thrust of worship is Godward and not selfward. The preacher preaches too long or too fast or too slow. We can still learn something from the lesson, and to the message, and not the method is where the emphasis needs to be placed. What about the other items of worship? The Lord's Supper, the singing, prayers, the fellowship. We still have that too. What our empty seat says. My occupant found greater joy in something else. My occupant did not seek the kingdom first. My occupant is not concerned with building up the local church. My occupant does not love God. To the preacher, it says, your sermon is not worth very much. Your preparations are useless and your efforts are not appreciated. To the visitor, it says, there's not much interest here. Very quickly. To the member, it says, someone found something more interesting than this service. To the non-member, it says, regular attendance is neither necessary or worthwhile. To the elder, it says, some of the sheep are out of the fold. To God, it says, there is something more important than worshiping you. And to Christ, it says, someone does not appreciate your sacrifice. I appreciate y'all's attendance this morning, and I hope you did learn something out of it. So sorry. Is there any comments, questions that you may have? Thank y'all very much.